Welcome to the Shower Epiphanies podcast, where we explore your hidden thoughts and desires, revealing your greatest drop the mic moments. Now, here's your host, Art Costello.
Welcome to the Shower Epiphanies podcast. Today, Christine Agro is on the show. And Christine is a conscious living and meditation, mindfulness, and mindset expert. She's the #1 international best-selling author of Awakening and Grow, a practical guide for your spiritual journey. Christine contributes meditation content to the Simple Habit app, and she is also a TEDx speaker. She's been seen on Good Morning Connecticut, Good Day Fox, Late Night with Seth Meyers, featured in the New York Times and quoted in a variety of publications, including Ask Men, Brides, Elite Daily, Ladders, and the Huffington Post. Welcome to the show, Christine. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Can you tell us your story, how it all started?
Story. Oh my goodness. I have several sections of my story. Briefly, who I am started when I was very young with this connection to a deeper awareness of something more. I think, one of the most powerful moments was when I was 12 and I realized if I didn't love myself, no one else was going to love me. And so I devised a tool. This was back in the 70s, early 70s, I guess. I sat on my bedroom floor and I looked in my mirror and I told myself that I loved myself over and over again until I was comfortable with it. This was at 12 years old, pre-Dr. Phil, pre-Oprah, right? There was no even inkling of self-help in my family.
Wow, prehistoric.
Right? And I look at that and I just think, it just is an indicator for me of this, internal GPS that has always guided me in terms of being conscious and aware of something more than our physical existence. And then, we can skip over a whole lot of time. I was living in Denver. I was 34, I think. And I was walking to work the one day and it's kind of funny. I don't know if it was Robert Guillaume who instigated it, but he was walking towards me. He was on Soap and he was a Broadway actor. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but so he was walking. Yeah. Okay. So, but for anybody who's not who's way younger than I am.
I'm really old.
Right, I know. It's anybody who's really young. This is who this man is. So he was walking toward me and I was going to work. And I had that moment where we caught each other's eye and he knew that I recognized him. I knew that he knew that I recognized him. My mind was going should I acknowledge him? Is this a private moment for him? This is running through my head. And as I got up to him and we were passing, I just said, "Good morning, sir." And he said, "Good morning." And we passed. And I swear it was a few steps after that, I had this epiphany, which was, it was really an awakening. It was, how did I get here? How did I get to this place in my life where I'm living in Denver? I'm doing the work that I'm doing. What led me to this? And it felt like every step had been sort of unconscious. It all worked, right? I had a great life. It wasn't like it was a bad life. But it was just an interesting moment of really just the layers peeling off and having this awareness of oh, I've been unconscious. And now I'm not. And then everything just rolled from there. I started exploring different things that were important to me and developing my clairvoyance. And I did a naturopathic training program and, just really kind of figuring out what was relevant and important for me. And it's led me to where I am today.
Well, it's really interesting and really, I always get interested when people's awakening, when they awakening. For me, it was at 9.
Yeah.
And I was abandoned and went to a mountaintop and just had a conversation with God about what was going to become of me. And after making that trip, I heard a voice that just said, your job is just to be and just do. Mm-hmm. And it really set the tone for the rest of my life, because I had to figure out how I needed to get out of the situation I was in.
Yeah.
And all that. So I'm always interested in people's awakening. And I always tell people, I mean, people ask me sometimes, well, how old do you have to be awakened?
Yeah.
And there is no age.
No.
Do you think it's really based on circumstance, that there's just something that triggers it?
Well, yeah. I mean, my information that I've gathered over the years, it's really about our journey, right? And our journey starts for most people. I think there's a lot of kids that are coming in conscious and they're retaining it. But, around our age, older, a little bit younger, we come in unconscious and we learn in this unconscious space through adversity. There has to be some challenge, there has to be some drama, there has to be some angst that pushes us to seek something more, to go beyond, whatever we see right in front of us. And once we reach a certain point, we pop through the top into this level of conscious awareness where we recognize that there's a whole different way. And I try to explain to people that, you cannot apply conscious awareness to unconscious space, right? So once you step into consciousness, you can't apply what you know now to what was. And I find that as a culture, we're in that right now, right? We've popped through the top with awareness on a lot of different things in the last 4 or 5 years, but we're trying to apply what we know today to what happened 10 or 12 years ago for people. And you really can't do that. They're two completely different spaces. And I just find that really interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought because, one of the things that I've learned through all the trials and tribulations of my 72 years on earth is that, to live in the here and now, to live in the moment, because nothing matters that happened to you before, and when you look ahead, you're taking up space when you don't have any control over that. The only thing that you really can control in your life is this moment now. And what I learned as a 9-year-old was to live in that moment and make the most of it, be the best that you could be. Because that's what the boys told me. It's my job just to be the best version of myself.
That's so powerful.
Yeah. And it really has been throughout my life because I've always done everything I've wanted. I mean, I've been successful and but the adversities have made me grow. And I put them into 3 major adversities in my life. First, 9, when my parents moved to this little farm in upstate New York from New Jersey. I had the beautiful life as a little boy. And then all of a sudden it was thrown into total chaos and turmoil. And I felt so abandoned and lonely at this farm that they bought and that neither of them really spent much time at and just left their kids there.
Wow.
And then I figured out that I would go in the Marine Corps at 18 when I graduated from high school and found myself in Vietnam, which was a challenge,
Yeah.
So that's my second challenge. And then my third challenge is when my wife passed away. My wife of 38 years passed away in 2006 of ovarian cancer. And those challenges are what has brought my best awareness, mindset. Those challenges have just made me grow. Really, in the past 11, 12 years since she's been gone,
Yeah.
I have probably done more growth between that time period than I did as a 9-year-old till I was 62, when she passed.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, I think that's common for, humans to, the older we get, we just have greater clarity. And I think we have a broader perspective that we can look at life and circumstances in different ways. But, I mentioned kids. I have a 15-year-old, and of course, he's been raised conscious because that's who I am. So, he's fascinating to me because we talk about, I believe that there's 3 core life lessons that we work on unconsciously. One is learning to validate ourselves. One is standing in our truth, and one is standing in our power. And so ever since he's been little, we've talked about this. When things come up, I'll be like, so what do you think you're working on here? And then, we have these conversations, and he's at the point now where he looks at his friends and he'll be like, oh, they're working on self-validation, right? He's like so clear about what's going on that it's just really great. And again, going back to this notion that when we step into conscious awareness, really the adversity pieces stop, because we can just learn by experiencing, we can learn by watching what's going on. We can have this awareness in our own space of, again, what we're working on. And so we don't need that pressure cooker to get us to make something different, like to do something different.
Yeah, I agree.
The need to have closure in any given situation is sheer human nature. And when it comes to romantic relationships, this desire skyrockets. Has your previously failed relationship left you in immense pain? It's not uncommon for people to shy away from a new relationship after their first one fails miserably. The fear of the unknown makes them hide in a shell to prevent any future heartbreak. Relatable? Despite wanting to love and be loved, you can't take the plunge if your mind and heart are still locked somewhere in the past. Maybe you aren't aware of the power of releasing the past, or perhaps you don't know how to do it. Art Costello in his online course teaches the art of moving on from bad places to happier, more stable ones. This course can change your life for good, helping you beat all kinds of negativity on the road to eternal bliss. Sign up now before the gloominess gets the better of you at expectationacademy.com.
You mentioned two really important things that I talk about. I think that man has two basic needs. One is validation, and then the other is love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, other than the sustenance, we need sustenance, water, food, and all that. But emotionally, the two things that man need the most is validation and love.
Yeah. So for me, I think it's important that we validate ourselves, because this is how I see it. If we need validation from somebody else, any exchange there needs to be an exchange of energy, right? So if I need validation from you, I actually have to give you something in order to receive that validation. So typically we give parts of ourselves away to do that. So if we learn to validate ourselves, we actually create a sense of freedom in our space. I do think that we need recognition. Like, it's nice to be acknowledged or recognized, but if we need that validation and we don't know how to do it ourselves, we typically are giving away something in order to know that we're okay. So I don't disagree with you. I think there's another step, right? There's another step in the process of where the validation comes from.
Well, let me explain how I think, and then maybe that will give you, because we actually agree.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Because, my area of expertise and research has been in expectations.
Okay.
And that's why I wrote the book, Expectation Therapy.
Yeah.
What I learned as a 9-year-old is that I do not need to rely on other people.
Yes.
That everything I need is within myself if I apply it and use it.
Yes.
And it all starts with how you expect and how you manage your expectations, because life never goes the way you want it to.
Right.
There's always challenges and adversities that you have to get through. But if you have integrity and all these core values in you, and you live to those core values and not to the expectations of the world around you, and that's basically the way that I've lived my life.
Yeah.
And have been able to do all the things I have, because I don't need anybody else's validation. My validation comes from within me, and my expectation for excellence of myself and my management of those expectations, knowing that at least I've tried things. I may not have been successful, or I may have failed, but I don't look at anything as a failure.
Right.
Because everything becomes a learning experience when you expect it to be. Mm-hmm. And
I love this. Yeah. We're on the same page. Absolutely. And expectations are interesting because, they are where so much of our dissatisfaction and unhappiness comes from. I mean, if I expect my husband or my son to do something and they don't do it, right, it's that expectation that actually causes most of the problem, right? It's like,
let me address this, because I got to address this. Don't expect your husband
exactly.
and
That's
your
what I'm
children
saying.
to do anything what you want.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all right to ask them to do something.
Right. Right.
And hopefully they will make it happen.
Yes.
But, you know,
it's the expectation that causes the problem. And that it's, totally.
and I'm gonna try to do a little education right here and get you to shift your thought process on expectations, because once you start thinking of expectations in a positive light and take that negative away from them, it's amazing what it does. It's amazing what it does to your family, to your friends, to the people around you, but more so, it's amazing what it does to you. Because, people used to say, why do you always glow? You like glow all the time, and everything you touch turns to gold and all that. I said, it doesn't. It's just that, my expectation is always everything's going to work out. It's going to be the way it's supposed to be. I don't fight life and I don't pull it. I don't tug it. I don't try to jump it. I just live every day the way that, every moment, the way it's supposed to be lived, according to what I think. But,
right. Well, I think what you think is great.
Well, it's just that it's a very nice way to live. It's happy, because we let the expectations of others destroy the joy. But more so what it does is it gives your power away. Because the power lies within you. Each and every one of us have these gifts that we've been granted. And I'm on my podium here preaching. But, I think it's important.
Well, you're preaching to the converted, but.
I love preaching to the choir. But, I want people to understand.
I know.
It's really them. One of the things I get asked often is, isn't that being really selfish? No, it's not. It's being self-caring.
Yeah. It's interesting how we experience the notion of selfishness, right? Like to even the aspect of self-validation, to not need that from somebody else. People feel like that's being self-centered or selfish. And in my perspective, it isn't. I mean, I think about, when we're putting information out there to the world, if you need people to appreciate it or approve it, then you're not going to be able to do what it is that you are meant to do in the world, because that is going to stop you. And the way I always look at it is, if it resonates, great. That's fabulous for you. If it doesn't resonate, I think that's great too, because it allows people to further define what isn't their truth, right? So I don't need you to like it or not like it. It's whatever it is for you. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, I think that's great too. And that comes from being in that space of not needing somebody to approve of what it is that I'm saying, for me to think that it is of value, right? I believe that it is of value, and that's what matters.
I agree. I mean, it really is. But it's so hard for people to digest it and practice it.
Yeah, well, we're conditioned, right, and programmed. So let's say that self-validation is, you're working on self-validation and you're 3 years old and you run up to your parents or your mother, and you're super excited about something, and the reaction is, I'm really busy, interrupted me, like I'm in the middle of something. And so this core wound starts at that point for people, where instead of validating themselves, they get wounded, they get whacked for looking for validation. And that's the unconscious lesson, right? The message there is do it yourself. But because we don't know that and we're not taught that, we go through life searching for, first of all, like this healing of the wound that gets created, that then gets piled on every time we reach out for validation and we don't get it. It's such a powerful tool to be able to validate yourself. It's amazing. I say it creates freedom, because you aren't beholden to anybody at that point.
Boy, amen to that. I mean, I'm living proof of that, because when I was 9, the only recognition I got, I didn't get it from teachers. I didn't get it from parents. I didn't get it. It was from myself. And that was, when I look back on my life, I think what a gift it was, because it's made me so aware now. So it's a great conversation.
Has anyone ever inspired you to discover a happier, healthier, and more fulfilled you? It is a magical experience, isn't it? Inspiration is indeed very powerful, yet it's often undermined. It can lift you from the ground to the sky in no time. Have you ever thought about returning the favor by inspiring the people around you? If you don't think you have it in you, we have good news for you. Art Costello's online course has everything you need to learn to supercharge yourself and shape your character into a powerful personality. Get ready to discover your strengths and unleash the creativity within. Don't believe it? Check it out yourself by signing up for this life-changing course at expectationacademy.com. That's expectationacademy.com.
Can you kind of tell us about your Awaken method?
Sure. It's basically a daily practice that is based in meditation, but it's not a meditation with the purpose of stilling your mind or quieting your mind. It's a meditation with the intention of bringing ourselves into our body, because we tend to kind of live slightly separate, spirit and body. We don't fully connect. So by grounding, by aligning, by pulling ourselves back in, we tend to send our energy and focus out into the past, into the future, into other people's business. So when we collect ourselves up, it just brings us together and makes us complete and whole. So, the Awaken method process is really about applying this daily practice that then clears the way for you to live, really in this conscious state of being.
Would you call, a lot of people here, they don't understand what consciousness is.
Yeah.
Because we have this idea of, our eyes are open and our brain's functioning and our body's functioning, so we're conscious.
Yeah.
Being conscious is much deeper than that. Can you kind of fill us in?
It really is. And I've been thinking about this so it's interesting that you ask, because it's been in my mind for the last, I think, month or so. I've been looking at people. And so we can have people who have like an awareness of the environment or an awareness of, they're vegans or they're vegetarians. So they have awareness at a level of empathy and, connection, cause and effect connection, that if I do this, then this happens, and I don't want that to happen, so I'm not going to do it. So that's a level of consciousness, but it isn't this place of where we shift into recognizing that we have the power to create our reality, that we have the power to manifest the things that we want in our life. And, so as a spiritual being, if we're fully connected to the body, we have the ability to instantaneously manifest, to self-heal, to heal others, to transmute time and space. We just gather these incredible powers that we're not able to utilize until we step into this space of awareness. And so we can look at consciousness all along our journey at different levels, but this space of awakening or consciousness or awareness that I'm talking about is this space where we recognize there's so much more to our life and our world than we ever even imagined. And again, if we're unconscious, we can't understand it, right? We just can't, we're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And you have to come into the space to be like, oh, there it is.
I've been harping on this on my show now for about the last 3 weeks, and it's something that was instilled at me at 9 years old. But I'm going to tell you something. I believe in the possibility of everything. Mm-hmm. Everything is possible. Everything becomes possible. And that is probably the one key element to my growth, because I see everything as possible.
Yeah.
Impossible only is a word in our mind that shuts and stops. It's like can't, won't,
right,
don't,
right.
Yeah.
And
those are words I've tried to eliminate out of my vocabulary for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's become such a part of my mindset from the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's why I do and try everything. Somebody asked me, well, isn't that being like fearless? And I said, well, I am fearless. And then somebody else said to me, okay, if you're fearless, would you walk a tightrope across the Grand Canyon? with no net. I said, no, I have fear.
Right. I didn't say I was not smart. I said I was fearless, right?
I said we have to put it in context.
Yeah.
I'm open and like to try everything. I mean, I'm open to trying everything.
Well, and I think it's the things that interest you and intrigue you. And some of those things probably come with a level of fear that you have to, overcome and step beyond. But, if walking across the Grand Canyon on a tightrope doesn't interest you, you're not going to do it. Right. But if you were interested, you might do it. You might be like, yeah, I'll give this a try.
I agree. I mean, the Walendas had to overcome whatever it was that they did to get up there and stack themselves bodies upon bodies.
No, thank you.
And do what they do. Yeah. I mean, they had to overcome it. And they had to have the mindset that they could.
Right.
That everything on that rope is actually becomes possible to them. Yeah. Not impossible. Yeah. It becomes possible.
And, and the desire to do it. People post this photo of this like tiny wall of a walkway in China where they walk up and I look at it and I'm like, no, like, I am not doing that. I know that. That's not a fear I need to overcome. I have no desire to. I have no need to. But getting up on a stage and talking to people, the energies that brings up for me, that's something I want to overcome because it's important to me. That has value to me.
Yeah. And it is all about the perspective.
Yeah.
And, I talk a lot about perception versus perspective. Mm-hmm. And, what we perceive in our eye and in our mind, people confuse perspective and perception. Mm-hmm. Quite a lot of the time.
Don't you love words? Like, I love looking at how people use words and picking it apart and making sense of like, well, this is actually not the right word, right? If we use this word, it changes everything. I just think words are so powerful.
Well, yeah, and I believe that it's really the tool that we have that communicates as writers and as people that talk from the stage. We never know what someone else's perception is of the words that we're using.
Yeah.
And I agree. I get really interested in it and I try to pick and choose so it works, so people understand what I'm trying to say. Because expectations, I think expectation is the most misunderstood word in our vocabulary.
Yeah,
so.
I'm thinking of, I had this guy sort of parachute into my life that was like, he was a catalyst. He was one of those people that sort of shook things up for you. And he called me a degenerative the one day and I was so offended. I was like, oh, and he looked at me and he laughed and he said, look it up. And I looked it up and I was like, oh, I am a degenerative. Right? It was just, it's the connotation that we put on it. But the word itself, I was like, oh yeah, I am a degenerate. It's like somebody who lives against the norms or like lives outside of the rules of society or something like that. And I was like, oh yeah, that's me.
Somebody who thinks differently.
Exactly.
That's one thing that I've known all my life about me is that I don't think like other people.
Yeah.
People that know me, I mean, just say, you don't think like normal people. But, I could get offended by that, but I'm not. I mean, because I know I don't.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I don't, because that makes me a catalyst for all of the millions of people that are out there that are normal.
Yeah.
And that there's nothing wrong with being abnormal in your thinking. Mm-hmm. It's that we put this connotation, like you said, to it, that if you don't live within the norm, why people want to be like everybody else?
It's safe.
It's safe. It's easy.
Yeah. It's easy. That's a good one, right?
Yeah. And you don't have to worry about.
And so the students that I work with, and they step into this conscious awareness space and they'll, there's always a moment where they're like, oh, it would have been, and even I went through this, like, oh, it would have been so much easier if I hadn't stepped into this awareness, if I just was going along in this unconscious space. And what I always point out is that all of this stuff would still be happening. You just wouldn't know how to handle it. Right? Like, you just wouldn't know what to do with it. And now you actually have tools and, ways that you can navigate these things that come up in your life and move beyond them.
Their expectations shifted.
Exactly. But it's funny how we think like, oh, it was easier. I know I was way upstate. I was living in just outside Saranac Lake. And I had this moment where I was like, it would have been so much easier if I hadn't awakened. Like this would and so the whole day, what I love about this is that the whole day I was shown where I was at made my life better. So rather than getting whacked and being shown in a negative way, like, well, this, as I was leaving the door, I heard, don't forget your keys because the door locks behind you. And I went back and I got my keys or I would have been locked out. I'm driving down the road and I work with energy. So I always put like a bubble around my car so that it's protected and I'm protected. I'm driving behind this beet truck and beets are flying off of it, right? And they're hitting cars and, like just bam, and smashing. And I had the bubble around the car and they never hit me. I was right behind it. They were hitting to the left and the right and they never hit me. And I was like, oh. And then I was in the parking lot and I had parked and something said, move your car, don't park here. So I moved and somebody came in right after me and parked there. And this cart came flying down this and just smashed right. And I was like, oh my gosh. And the whole day was like that, right? The whole day was this beautiful example of how my connection, my willingness to listen to the messages that come, how that supported me in my life. And I was like, okay, yeah, I don't wish that. Like, I'm happy that I am where I am. But it's funny,
That's a good point. And I think that we ought to try to expound on it a little bit because people don't understand that when we can manifest stuff and we can really use our mind to protect ourselves. I mean, think of all the times that you're out there and if you would have turned right, a car would have hit you, but you turned left instead. Something told you to do that.
Yeah.
Listening to your gut. I'm a big, big believer and people need to trust and listen to their inner self, what it's telling them, and learn how to have an inner dialogue with yourself. I'm constantly talking to myself in this inner dialogue that I have. And it's continuous with me. It just goes all the time. And people just need to know that it's okay and really encourage it and encourage your children to start trusting their gut because
absolutely, yeah.
Kids have so many influences on them today. You having a 15-year-old, I've got teenage grandkids. So, I see these things that they're bombarded with today that we had no clue about. We had no clue about it. But that's the way the world's moving, and we've got to learn to adapt with it.
Absolutely. I agree. We have conversations in our house about, how much time, between my husband and I, right? How much time he spends on this or that. And I'm always in the space of, is he balanced? Is he doing okay? Like, is he okay as a whole? And if he's okay as a whole, just let him be. Like, let him navigate the world that he's in the way that he needs to navigate it, because that's the world that he has. We can't change it for him. We can't go back in time and take these technologies and things away. He needs to learn how to he needs to learn how to moderate his time. And so it's this, it's sort of this ongoing conversation that comes up. And I always go back to, is he okay? If he's okay, I'm okay.
You know what? But you're teaching him to trust himself in his journey.
Yeah.
And that's the real beauty in it, because we have so many parents today that try to navigate for their children. My daughter and I just had this conversation about, they had a science fair at my granddaughter's school and some of the projects. You just flat out knew the kids didn't do it.
Right. I know.
You hear the parents say, I worked on this so hard.
Yeah, I know.
Why is that fair to the other kids that where the parents said, no, that's your project. You're going to do it. Figure it out yourself.
Yeah. He was in 4th grade where I learned that lesson in just like a very quick and funny way. He had this online math software that he had to use, and he was supposed to get to a certain percentage. And when he got to the percentage, he could stop. And the teacher can look and see like that they got there. And it was late and he was tired and he was at like 85. And I said to him, you know what, go get ready for bed. I'll just do the last like 3 and that'll be it. And so he goes to get ready for bed and I start to get them wrong. And he comes back and he's at 35. And he freaks out. And I'm like, oh my God. I had to go into school and tell the teacher that I was doing his homework for him. And she looks at me and I said, you don't have to say another word to me like, at all. Like, I just, like, you know, that is it. And even him, he's like, don't touch my homework right from there and out. Like, it was just the funniest moment.
That is so funny. I know. But you know what the beauty of it is?
We both learned.
Well, that is the beauty of it. But the other part of it is that he learned that you took responsibility.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
For your botching it. You know?
You know, I have always been really honest with him. You know, if I make a decision and then he's a good debater, he'll come back and talk to me about it. Like, I have apologized to him. I have acknowledged being wrong. And I love him so much. So his dad got him this credit card because he was going to like to Washington or something. So it was like a debit card and had some money on it. So we let him keep it, but he was supposed to let us know if he was going to use it. That was the sort of the rule. So there was $75, I think, on it. And he was playing Fortnite. This was probably about 4 years ago. He was playing Fortnite. You know, he just got this impulse and he started buying skins and he didn't tell us. And he spent $75 on skins. And then he sat like, I guess, terrified. He didn't know what to do. Eventually his father sees what happened. And so there's this big conversation. And then at some point he walks into my office and he sits down and he's in tears and he looks at me and he goes, I don't know what happened. Like, I just didn't even think about it. I just started using it. And so we had this really great conversation about, impulses and, desire and how we react and respond to things and, responsibility with money. And it was just this beautiful moment, but he was so sincere. And then he punished himself, which, he's like, I can't use my computer for I think it was a month or something. And I was like, well, that was a lot harder than I would have been. So, okay, So yeah, I just love him. I love watching how he navigates the world and how he applies, these pieces of awareness to it. So anyway.
Yeah, those are life experiences that really teach children and ourselves lessons that are just invaluable. Because kids, think about it. It's a credit card. It doesn't look like money to them.
Right. And they even at that age have a full understanding of money, right?
Yeah. And unfortunately, the schools don't teach about money.
No.
We have college kids that go into their freshman year and have credit cards and their parents are all of a sudden are choking because they just go put things on them and don't think about the consequences of it,
Yeah.
Somebody pays it, it wasn't them.
Right.
So.
Don't know which direction you want your life to take? Are you sinking deep down into the pit of uncertainties day by day? So, what's the secret to leading a happy, satisfied life? It's taking matters into your own hands. But what if the matters in question are a total blur? Art Costello's Expectation Academy course aims to tell you exactly how you can get some clarity in your life. This course can be your savior on your journey to reinventing yourself. While you certainly can't plan your whole future ahead, You can definitely control twists and turns your life takes. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for this course now at expectationacademy.com. Get a chance to broaden your horizons and add meaning to your life. That's expectationacademy.com.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you, if you could give me a definition between mindfulness and mindset.
Yeah. So, mindfulness is the awareness of what's going on, within us and around us, like how we notice our reaction to things or our thought process, like without judging ourselves, right? I mean, even like in the meditation space, like let's say you're meditating and thoughts are coming in, instead of being like, oh my gosh, I can't stop myself from not thinking. It's just noticing it, like, oh, there's a thought. There's a thought. It's an awareness of the breath and the body, like the tensions and how we hold ourselves. So that's what mindfulness is. And then all the tools that go with it to help shift whatever we're aware of. Where mindset is it's really about how we think about things, how we perceive things, what we believe, what we think we believe, because oftentimes what we think we believe is not actually like what the truth is. And it's recognizing that we can, what I call, retrain the brain, right? If we think a certain way, we can train ourselves to think differently, to experience something differently. So that's how I see the difference between the two.
Yeah, and I think those are good explanations, because I like to ask my guests that, because it just enlightens people to the difference between mindfulness and mindset.
Yeah.
I know we all talk about setting our mind on a goal or setting our mind to do something or that. It actually works with expectations too, because once we have the mindset about managing our expectations and not letting others control us through expectations, because that's the reason that advertisers and churches and schools and all that use expectations is it's a tool to control the public.
Yeah.
It's controlling people, and they take our power away. And I think that's why it's so important to have a mindset on your expectations at the core of who you are. Mm-hmm. And once you know who you are, life unfolds like a beautiful flower, because everything just starts going the way it's supposed to. There's none of that tugging and pulling, And the other part of it is you take full responsibility for who you are and what you do. You can't point a finger at somebody else. When you live to your expectations, you can't go and say, well, you made me do that, because it causes you to actually take full responsibility for your thoughts, deeds, and actions. And that's what I love about it. So any parting thoughts you had for us today?
I don't know. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like, little things shifting around in me, which I always love. I think like we're from the same soul clan or something.
We are.
I know, right?
We are. I mean, let's admit it. We are. I'm not going to fight it. But, that's the beauty of it, because when you open up the lines of communication and you do it so authentically and you do it from the heart and from your gut, I mean, we couldn't have a bad conversation, could we?
No.
I often get told, after the show's over, people say to me, I said things to you that I never would have said to anyone else, and I just did it publicly. Can we remove that from the podcast?
I had a parent come up to me at school and told me like the most personal thing, and then looked at me and said, I don't know why I just told you that. And I was like, it's okay. It's in the vault. Don't worry about it.
Well, I think it's when you have this consciousness, it really does put a glow or an aura around you. Yeah. And it's one of authenticity, and people know that what they tell you, you can be trusted with it.
Yeah.
And, they feel comfortable with it and all that. It's a gift, I think.
I think it's like there's like this container, and when they step through it, they step into that moment of awareness that they're not usually in, and they're just like, la, 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 la. And then they step back out and they're like, uh-oh. It's like walking into a confessional, right?
Okay, I know the audience cannot see this or not see us, but I'm going to ask you a question. I see a guitar and a cello behind you.
Yes. So I played the violin when I was in third grade. Or was it third grade? Yeah, it was third grade. I really wanted to play the cello, and my mother said, no, you'll play the violin. So I played the violin until I was in like ninth grade, and I hated every minute of it. I hated just hated the violin. I didn't like the way you had to hold it. I didn't like the sound of it. And then when my grandmother passed away, she left me a little bit of money, and I was doing my MBA, and I bought a cello. And then I started taking lessons, and the woman, she was with the Philharmonic in the town. She's like, "You've never played before?" And I was like, "No." And I was just like, it was just in me. It was so in me. And then the guitar is something that I like to challenge myself and learn new things. So the guitar is something that I'm picking away at trying to learn. So
when I was in college, I had a roommate. His name was Guy Harris, and he actually built harpsichords, and he wrote classical music. He literally could pick up any instrument there was. And, this was back in the late 60s. And we'd have all kinds of people. He was a music major at San Diego State, and I was a psychology major. And I ended up managing his rock and roll band. They wrote some great music. I mean, way, way before their time. Anyway, he picked up a flute, had never played it before, and did Jethro Tull kind of Ian Anderson kind of stuff,
Wow, yeah.
Just picked it up and blew everybody away. But he could do that with any instrument. He would just pick it up and start playing it like he had been there all of his life.
Yeah.
And it was such a talented gift. But in the band that I managed for him, we had guitar, we had harpsichord, we had cello, we had violin, and played rock music. So, you can imagine it was before its time.
Yeah.
And they just wrote such great music. And I've always had a love for music. And I ended up working for about 7 years in the music management business with Jose Feliciano.
Oh, nice.
So I always had this penchant, and I saw your cello and I had to ask. So, But anyway, we're nearing our end of our time together, and I wanted to give you an opportunity. You can tell people where to get a hold of you, anything you've got coming up, any little tidbits that you want to leave us with. And after you do that, I'll take us out of here and we'll be done.
Okay, so just a couple things. I have an app. It's called Awaken and Grow Flow, and you can get it for Apple or Android. If you go to awakenandgrowflow.com, you can type in your phone number and it'll send you the link. But what the app is it's a collection of all the work that I do. And I do some mini courses, mini challenges in it that are live. I do a daily message, and they range from mindset to conscious awareness. And it's just like a nice little reminder of like to be present and things to focus on. And then there's some meditations in there, and it's just a whole collection of things. I've got mudras in there and mantras in there. It's all of my work is in this app. So if you're interested in exploring your own awareness and, what I've been saying today kind of piques your interest, it's a good place to check it out. I have two separate websites. I have christineagro.com, which is all about mindset, mindfulness, and meditation. And then I have Awaken and Grow, which is really like the deeper work where you go deeper. My book, Awaken and Grow, A Practical Guide for Your Spiritual Journey, I am so excited to say was awarded the New York City Big Book Award this past Friday in spirituality. So that just blew me away. And you can get that on Amazon. And I think those are just sort of highlights. I'm on all social media at Christine Agro, mostly active on Instagram and Facebook and a little bit on Twitter, but you can find me anywhere. I've got a YouTube channel. It's, I'm all over the place. Whatever your pension is, I'm there. And I think that's it. I think, just parting words is, develop that inner GPS that you have. Listen to the messages that come. Don't be afraid to say yes to the things that really call you, because those are the things that are guiding you to something more.
Wise words from my new friend. wise words. It's been a pleasure, and I really want to thank you for being on the show. And I'm going to encourage everybody to follow you and look into your work and become aware and really start learning how to live the life that they were meant to live. And thank you. And I'm going to let Heather White take us out of here. Everybody knows where they can get a hold of me, expectationtherapy.com. And audience, thank you. And I'm going to encourage you again, get after Christine. This has really been fun, Christine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the show. Drop us your comments and questions with what you want answered on the show. You can subscribe on iTunes and Binge Network. You can also get more information on the website, expectationtherapy.com.